the way I judge an organization's D&I capabilities or D&I policies is to look at their job adverts, right?
Looking at the opportunities that they
Job
give.
adverts that they
Okay.
list
Yes.
out in the market, right?
Yes.
If you still have years of experience listed on your job advert,
Hmm.
you're not D&I compliant. You're
Hmm.
an absolutely exclusive organization.
Hmm.
If you're putting out there that we only hire people from top tier MBA universities,
Hmm.
you're not D&I compliant.
Hmm.
You're absolutely exclusive. Because there could be a great tier 1 resource in a tier 3 city. And just because you want some elitistic, I'm an alumnus of a top business school as well.
Yes.
Please don't get me wrong. But when you
No,
put it out on
no,
a
this
job
is
advert,
kind of a awareness.
yeah.
Huh.
So when you say should have at least 15 years of experience, tadak, you're exclusive. You're no longer inclusive as an organization.
Hello, welcome to another podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Teja Gudluru. He is a leadership coach at corporate level. He is a career growth mentor, TEDx speaker, and a serial entrepreneur. Today we are going to discuss more on the career growth and leadership coaching at the corporate level, at CXO level. Hi, Mr. Teja.
Hi. Hello,
Thank,
Norma.
yeah. Thank you for accepting for the podcast.
Thank you.
So, when we were actually discussing about the leadership coaching, I would like to understand a little bit about your journey so that we will unfold more.
Sure. So I've only worked for one company all my life, HSBC. So I joined them right after campus, worked with them almost over a decade, and came out and started my journey as an entrepreneur. Failed mostly the initial part of my life, and then I've now run successful companies. And at some point of time, I realized, look, I probably got lucky that I've had the best of mentors, the best of lessons that I've learned from my startup. Of course, from failures, but
Yes.
I wanted to see if there is a better way for me to guide people so that they can learn from mistakes. And I network a lot as a part of being an entrepreneur, and I hear a lot of failure stories. So I thought, why not take this to people so that they don't commit the same mistakes? And I think essentially it's coming from there that I started reaching out to people to say, hey, I'd love to come and talk to your teams or your colleges. So that's how it all started. So now I travel around the globe doing a lot of leadership development. I travel around a lot of campuses in the country, almost 450 plus campuses. I've been a visiting faculty at IIM Udaipur for the same thing, where I've helped them briefly on how to grow better, get better placements and things like that. So that's the background. That's how it all started. It all started from my absolute innate need to help others.
Okay. So, when you plan to get into coaching, what kind of skills that you actually picked up to become the coach? Because usually you have to be prepared for getting into that role, right? So, what kind of learning that you had from your end?
So I started more as a trainer first, and I think that's where all my basics were taken care of. In terms of how do you stand up, how do you train. So I did have the opportunity with the company that I was working for, HSBC, where they did take me through that as a basic course, right, of what they call train the trainer. Leadership coaching came from the fact that I've been a leader in the organization. I've run a couple of companies. It purely came from sharing my experiences. And what I've noticed, one, as an employee reporting to a boss, and two, being a boss. So I just try to keep it practical. But for somebody who's listening to this and for them to kind of start that journey, at a basic level, do you enjoy speaking to people? Are you somebody who's out there who's, are you the one who is waiting for a flight and would probably start a conversation with someone, right? Because I think that nobody can teach you. It has to come from within.
Yes.
While I'm not saying only extroverts should do this, but at least at a minimum, you should be interested in other people's lives,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That's when you'll have the curiosity to observe people. And when you observe people, there are learnings. And now you're ready to share those observations with others. And that's what makes you a fabulous facilitator, trainer to begin with. Coaching, and I know we interchangeably use these terms, training and coaching, especially in India. I've noticed this.
In your terms, what is the difference?
There is a huge difference. If I am a Java expert and I want to run a Java course or a Python course, I'm a trainer
Mm.
because it's my way. This is how it is. I'm primarily instructing how it should be done.
Mm.
Right. Of course, I take Q&A, but I'm not necessarily saying making it two-way. Right. It's one way. I know the knowledge. I'm imparting that to you. Facilitation is where I know you know. It's just that I'm here to, kind of get that bulb on moments for you.
Mm.
Right. This is where most leadership trainers ideally should be. They aren't, in my experience, but that's exactly where they should be. Because as somebody, like, I do a lot of CXO level trainings, that fellow has 30 years of experience. Right. And in that particular group, I have about 8 or 9 CXO level people.
Mm.
Collectively, their experience is more than 150 years. What will I alone, with just 24 years of experience, tell them that they don't? So leadership is all about getting their perspectives back into the place, because when you get into a certain role, you're constantly firefighting every day.
Mm.
Business needs take over than people need sometimes. And that's where leadership becomes in deficit. So if I have to go and tell them, all I need to do is ask them to remind them to tap into what they already know. And my job there is only facilitation. So I cannot be God's gift to mankind telling them what they must be doing. All I need to be doing is asking the right questions so that it triggers a thought process of what they already know, but they aren't doing now. Because
Yes.
knowing is not the same as doing.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Most leaders, when I give them a framework, they are like, oh, I know this.
Mm.
But the next question I ask is, but do you do this?
Right. Okay.
Oh, not really. I'm so busy. I don't have time. That's the point.
Mm.
So my idea is for them to remind them why it is important to talk to people, why it is important to be empathetic, right? Why it is important to connect at a personal level. You'll be surprised, Sri Lakshmi. I keep joking about this all the time. Sorry, I'm giving a very long answer to
No
a
problem.
simple question. If you notice the topics that I cover, in fact, globally companies cover for leadership trainings, these are skills that we are born with most of the time.
Mm.
Listening skills,
Yes.
right? Being more human, being vulnerable. This is what we are teaching leaders today.
Mm.
Things that they already learnt at home.
Yes.
Things that are there in our cultures anyway. Now suddenly an external trainer or a facilitator or a coach like Teja will come and tell them, be more empathetic. What more can I tell them? All I need to do is ask the right questions. So that's facilitation.
Okay.
Coaching is the next level, where I don't have to be the subject matter expert to be a coach.
Mm.
Right? I train CXOs of pharma companies. I know nothing about pharma. Right? But I still coach them. And the reason why I'm able to do that is the only two skills required in coaching are asking great questions and listening.
Yes.
That's what good coaches do.
Yeah.
A good coach never gives advice.
Mm.
A good coach only asks great questions, because again, that's making the other people think.
Yes.
So that's the difference between a coach, a facilitator, and a trainer.
When you said, like, you just make them think that what is correct, but how much percentage do you feel that they realize and then actually do it at the corporate level?
It's a tricky question, because I think most of them, and I'll be honest, in my experience, I've trained more than 30,000 people now across the globe, almost 50 plus countries. Most of them get it, right? I always keep saying this. In fact, it's one of my favorite things that I keep saying, that we are all right intentioned people. I am super confident. No employee wakes up in the morning and says, I'm so bored with my life, let me be an underperformer for a month. Right?
Yeah.
I am super sure no boss is waking up in the morning and saying, I'm so bored with my life, let me spoil a career, man. Right?
Yeah.
We are all right intentioned people.
Yes.
Right? But, I keep referring to Stephen Covey for this. He says humans judge themselves by their intent and judge others by their behavior. Right?
Oh.
Nobody has time to understand our intent. All people are doing is observing our behaviors and judging us. When we get into a fight and all we are telling ourselves, why doesn't he understand me?
Mm.
Why doesn't, that's not what I meant.
Correct.
Right? Is what
It
we keep
happens.
saying.
Yeah.
But when we have to observe somebody else, how dare he say that to me? I am not saying what must be this fellow's intent in telling me that. I never give that benefit of doubt, but I expect it.
Mm.
The reason why I'm telling you this for the question that you asked is everybody gets it because they genuinely want to be empathetic. They genuinely want to be known. You know, one powerful question I always ask is when we get into colleagues, when we were working, we either caught up for a party or in a conference or somewhere, we're constantly talking bad about our bosses. Right?
Mm.
So the one question today I ask leaders is, would you want to be spoken about like that in some house party that's happening? Do you want to be the focus of attention? It hits people hard,
Yes.
right? And the answer is nobody wants to.
Yes.
So then comes the next part, which is, do they actually implement it or do it? Right? They don't most of the time because once they go back to the office or to their shop floor, it's the same firefighting again. So unless their super management, their boss, the super boss, they are inclined to the same thing that they want these leaders to exhibit. A lot of times these leaders ask me, Teja, you come to our sessions. You tell us, please take care of your team, please motivate the team, be there for them. But who's there for us? Nobody does that to me.
Mm.
So essentially that's where the gap is, because the leaders believe Teja has come because there's a checklist, there needs to be a leadership team. We spoke some great, it's like a satsang, most of the training programs, right? How many people from the satsang actually implement everything that they hear from the satsang?
Yeah.
But at that time when they are in the satsang, they are super motivated,
Yes, yes.
right? They want to start jogging, they want to start meditate. About 5% of them ever actually take it seriously because there's no continuity back in their life.
Mm.
They'll go back home, it's the same financial problems, it's the same bad boss. They feel like, you know what, meditation, I don't have time for meditation. I need to fix this first, then I'll meditate. Same thing at work. Let me fix this firefighting first, keep my job, then I'll become a better leader. Right now, let me be a manager, is what subconsciously everybody has.
Okay.
So that's why I keep talking about holistic. I never suggest companies to start from the bottom. I always ask them to stop from the top.
Okay.
If you need a change in the company,
It has to be from the
train the
top.
CEO first.
Yes. Okay. So, when it comes to actual corporate training at the leadership level, you see a lot of nominations coming from the leadership, right? Do you actually face challenges in having people who are denying on the facts and then do not answer? Like, how do you handle such a difficult crew?
So, in my experience, Sri Lakshmi, that happening is very rare. There are people who are reluctant to learning. That's not because of me. That's because of how they've already been treated in the organization.
Mm. Okay.
Right? It's like this, right? I mean, I have somebody, let's say my neighbor, who's always insulting me, right? Always picks up a fight. Always one drop of water when I'm watering my plant falls into his house, he'll start shouting. And on Diwali, he'll come with a sweet box and say, thank you for being a great neighbor. Of course, I'll be pissed. Right? So, when you don't treat them well throughout the year, when they work, the work culture is bad. That at least for that person, please understand, I'm not saying the organization is bad, but that person's perception about your organization is that it's a terrible place to work for. Now, when you put that person, and in all probability, the leadership team is thinking, this fellow is already so frustrated. Let me send this fellow to a training program. Maybe that will motivate him.
Because that's the perspective usually at leadership people.
But have you told him that?
Huh.
99% of the time, they don't tell him that. Right? The leadership team just takes a decision, say, nominate this fellow.
Randomly, yes.
And this fellow is now thinking, okay, one more thing this management is trying to prove to me, that they've sent me to a leadership program because they feel I don't have leadership skills, is what that guy is thinking. So it actually ends up demotivating him than it does motivating him.
Okay.
So it's all about, so that's what I'm trying to say. Majority of the time, people are receptive to learning. They may not believe that that learning will work for them based on the work culture, but most of them want to learn because I think that's there. Where I have seen most of the time things go wrong is in understanding the training requirement itself. Often, I have management teams, and I'm talking even major corporate organizations, right? I don't want to take names, but the big five, they come with requirements, to say, hey, I want my team to get trained on neuro-linguistic programming. I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds fancy, but why? And they'll give me 15 reasons. Usually when I hear fancy terms like this, right, I insist on talking to the participants beforehand, like a focus group discussion or discovery call per se, just to understand their what are their needs. 90% of the time when I get fancy requirements only, 90% of the time that's not what the participants want. Right?
So it's the organization wants.
It's a gap. Somebody heard the term neuro-linguistic programming. I want my team to go through it. These fellows are saying, forget neuro-linguistic programming. Can you teach my boss to have one-on-one conversations with us? Right? Can you teach them, or can we at least talk to each other? That's why majority of it's not because of some perceived collaboration training we don't need. Just teach us how to talk to each other. Communication skill training we need is what they tell sometimes. So then of course I take it back and I work with them. But the point is, most of the time it's the requirements that go wrong. It's not the training, it's not the participants.
So do you feel that before they take a decision on what kind of training has to be given, do they do some kind of an assessment inside and then?
Most of them do. Most good organizations do a training need analysis. Some people do it linear, where they're only talking to clients. Client feedback sometimes drives it. But good companies do a holistic 360-degree feedback to understand, plus performance, business performance and all of that. But majority of them, it's still a checklist exercise. That I need to finish X amount of hours of training. So therefore, these are the famous topics that are the buzzwords in the market. So let's train them. Like D&I, for example, right? Diversity and inclusion. There was I don't remember which one, and I'll help you with the citation after the interview, perhaps, where they interviewed a lot of people, and this is primarily a West report, right? Not India, about whether people liked homosexuals. It turns out, and it's a psychometric assessment, it turns out more than 60% of the people of that survey were homophobic. But when they actually said it, they said they're okay with it. Right? The reason why I'm saying this is, so much is happening around diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
Right? And this is again just my personal opinion. I know I haven't got an answer to this. If you look at essentially how the world works, including how most performance management works, everybody's being told, build your networks, be more visible, right? And this is what's being told to even employees in organizations. You got to be more visible, got to build your personal brand, which is important. But somewhere, aren't we crossing the line of forcing introverts to become extroverts? How is that diversity and inclusion? Why aren't introverts being told about career choices where they can thrive by being individual contributors? Why should they force themselves out into another behavior that is not natural to them? Because they can never be the best extrovert. They can be the best introvert and perform really well on individual contributor jobs. Right? It's just, I'm not saying it's applicable in every case, but I'm saying generally, we generalize these learnings for everybody. So that's where I think most of the time people go wrong.
It has to be designed personally, individually.
Exactly. And good companies do that.
Okay.
Most good companies do that. Today we have AI-based apps that enable people to have individual learning journeys. But that's a minority of a number. Majority of the companies still just do checklist-based training and development activities.
Okay. So, when a person at a CXO level is trying to implement such trainings to their next level leaders, will they try to, have you ever seen such scenario that they will try to introspect themselves and see, okay, first I'm lacking in these skills, and then first I should learn these and then try to get into next levels. Have you encountered any such situation?
Yes, absolutely. So many times. One such company, I think it was a family run business in Mumbai. It's a jewelry designing manufacturing company. In fact, majority of the jewelry stores that you see in Hyderabad get their jewelry made there. Right from procurement of the material to designing it so they make it for these large jewelry. The designs are sent by the companies,
Okay.
the large jewelry chains. Everything else is done by this company. Right? I'm not allowed to take the name. It's in Mumbai. Amazingly, all the major positions in that company are from the same family. Okay. Amazingly, the CEO, which is the top of the leader of the house, right? Also the leader of the organization. He went through a program in the US somewhere where they made him go through an assessment. And that's when he realized that there are some significant flaws in the way his current leadership style is.
Oh.
Right? So he came back, ensured that everybody else from his family or in the senior positions go through that assessment. Compared it, did a group chart of where we probably as an organization, as a leadership team, going wrong. And then called me to kind of design a program for them first.
Okay.
To say, how can we collaborate beyond our relationships at work? Right? Because essentially I'm seeing this from the report. And of course, I knew that report. So I said, let's do a session. So we did an offsite. We did a full day. We spent some time together, made some plans. I like to see that, because when a leader is able to come up and say, you know what, sorry folks, looks like I need to improve, you automatically created a learning culture in the organization. But when I'm sitting out here saying, I'm okay, you're not okay, is when people don't believe in that training. Because your leader is not able to role model the behaviors that he's expecting out of you. So I think I've had many examples like that where there are some good leaders in the market.
Yeah,
Sri Lakshmi. Not all of them are bad.
Yeah, there's always a combination, but you tend to see such kind of leaders too, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And it's rare, but there are quite a few of them. It's not a minority. There are quite a few of them. It's just that they're never loud, and that's why you never hear about them. But you will see that the teams under them grow the fastest, right? I know, in fact, my mentor, and I think he's in fact recently told me, stop taking my name so much, because everywhere I go, I keep, because I'm extremely grateful to him. His name is Manish Mandyan. I learned so much from him. I mean, he would remember what my dad does, which company my dad works for, what issues we were having. And it's just not me. Everybody that are in his department, he knows them by name. He knows their family background. Does it make a difference? It does, it does not. It depends on you. Sometimes it goes a long way. Right? I met Manish after 10 years, a few years ago. And he knew my dad's name, and he was like, Rameshji, how is he? Has he retired from Canara Bank? I'm like, how do you remember this, Manish? Do you have like an Excel sheet to manage? Right? I'm struggling to remember that. But I felt nice. I'm still talking about it today.
Yes.
Right? Trust starts from things like these.
Yes. The
Little
micro
things.
things which are not visible to the eyes. Okay.
So yeah, there are leaders like that, for sure.
Okay. So do you think that after, you have trained 30,000 odd people, is there a major problem with the people or the processes in the organization when it comes to coaching?
Process. For me, people are always, like I said, right intention. Okay. Nobody wants to be an underperformer. Nobody wants to create a bad culture. Some do. It's a minority. Majority of them, if I look at our lives at 30,000 feet, irrespective of the country, we are all the same. Right? I want to wake up in the morning, have a great cup of coffee, ensure that all my morning chores are done, kids are off to school, everything is sorted. I take a deep breath, I come to office or I log into my office. Have a great productive day at work. Right? Make some friends in that process if you're lucky. Finish on time. Right? Come back home on time or meet some friends on the way back before I come back home. Improve my financial stability, provide for my loved ones immensely. at a very high level, we're all driven by this.
Mm.
Globally, I'm not just talking about Indians,
Yes.
right? Globally. Which means we are all on the same thing. We all know that, we are here for a purpose. Where it all goes wrong is when your processes don't support humanness. When your AI tech is not ethical, moral enough to consider human values, human behaviors, in the name of being competitive, right? How many corners are you able to cut?
Mm.
For people, it makes a huge difference, because you shouldn't, right? People are your assets. Now, surprisingly, and I also keep saying this, Sri Lakshmi, if you look at, and I will take names here because I want these companies to get highlighted, right? If you look at the companies that have the average employee time spent highest, TCS, for example, Tata Group comes to mind, right?
Mm.
But when you compare Tata's salaries to its competition,
Mm.
they aren't the top of the list.
Yes.
They pay decent salaries, but they're not high salaried jobs.
Yes.
Some do niche jobs, but mostly they are in the average,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And yet people stay there. Their average, I think, is definitely about 8.5, 9 years. Like, of the lakhs of people that work for them,
Yes.
the average, so any second person you meet from Tata says, I've been there for 15 years.
Mm.
I've been there for 20 years, right? So there must be something beyond money that makes people stick,
Yes.
right? There must be something that they see in their chairman, in their organization, in the way they. There are a lot of other things that drive.
Mm.
So mostly it's not the people. It is the culture. It is the processes, and sometimes maybe the leaders. Again, people, but sometimes maybe the leaders who drive that culture. But most of the time, it is process.
But this process has been created by people, right?
Look, I mean, if you look at any company's policy, they are extremely employee friendly, right? They're extremely ethical. So somewhere, of course, it is the people that spoil it,
Okay.
right? But again, the fact that nobody checks that, so that's again a process, which means if my manager is able to get away with nonsense,
Mm.
right? A lot of HRs don't like it when I say this, but you ask any HR, there's a common cliche in the market, right? Just to answer your question, right? They say people leave their managers, not organizations,
People say that.
right?
Yeah.
I disagree with it.
Mm.
People leave organizations that tolerate mediocre managers,
Mm.
right?
Correct.
They're not leaving the manager. If the company is damn good,
Mm.
and if I know that there is an escalation matrix where if my boss is ill-treating me, or I think it is unfair treatment, if I'm heard, and if there is a genuine mistake, I see a change in my manager, just like how they expect me to change when a feedback is given,
Mm.
then I don't care how this manager is, because I now believe the company,
Yes.
right? But
Right.
when I've complained to my management that this is a bad boss, I see zero change in the boss.
Mm.
I see zero change in the culture of my team. I am now thinking all these guys are the same,
Mm.
right? So I'm leaving an organization that hasn't nurtured their managers well enough. I'm not leaving my manager,
Okay.
because if I had a choice, I wouldn't leave a good company for one idiot, right? But if I'm spoiling my career path and I'm quitting, it's because I lost trust in the organization. Of course, the manager is a trigger,
Mm.
but I'm actually not leaving the manager, I'm leaving the organization. So I think it's chicken or egg, right? Policy or people, it goes hand in hand.
Hand
But
in hand.
most of the time, I'd like to believe that people are nice.
Okay.
The process of not keeping leaders at check
Mm.
is probably what's caused this. So
Okay.
it's still a process for me.
Okay. At the if you have to reach to a leadership level, you went through certain journey, you gain good amount of experience and all. So adapting to new trainings, new technologies is kind of a challenge that we see in certain organizations. So have you anytime encountered such challenges, and then how did you actually?
Always.
Mm.
And for a simple reason, because most of these organizations, especially if they are huge, they have other problems of moving on and adapting to newer cultures, newer tools.
Correct.
If it's a smaller company, the set of challenges are different,
Mm.
right? They're trying too much, perhaps, right? Or they're trying things that are less expensive because they're smaller organizations and not necessarily the best in the market, but the ones that are most affordable in the market. But the problems are the same for both. I don't think anybody is spared there in terms of adapting to newer technologies. That's global.
Mm.
And I think that is also the new normal.
Oh, okay.
I think I think it was Elon Musk, but I would like to stand corrected if that is not him. Said something that the amount of change that as humans we are experiencing today
Mm.
is the least we'll ever see compared to the future,
Okay. It's gonna be more rapid.
right? Uh, when COVID happened, when the pandemic happened, right? Which IT employee, which procurement person, which support services staff, which admin had the experience of that scenario, of a complete lockdown?
Mm.
I would have hired from the best of Ivy League schools, right? Who had experience of sending out desktops home so that people can work from home, like call centers and critical processes, right?
Yes.
Who had the experience of doing that? Now, of course, there will be a few people. But when the pandemic happened, when suddenly, all of a sudden, everything had to be shut,
Yes.
right? People figured out a way.
Mm.
Now, I'm not, no, God forbid, I'm not saying we should have another scenario like that. But those kind of complex issues can, like the floods recently in one of the states, right? I mean,
Yes.
most of the states, things are changing, weather is changing, political scenarios are changing, markets are changing. It's only going to get, changes are going to get worse in the future. So previously when we hired people, when you're early stages of your career, most of the time, again, depending on the job that you're applying for, you're hired for your IQ.
Mm.
That's why you have assessments and
Yes.
aptitude tests and all of
Yes.
that. Once you're ready to become a mid-level manager, apart from IQ, you're also looked at and evaluated for your EQ, which is your emotional quotient.
Quotient.
Your ability to manage yourselves, your emotions, and also able to help others. If you want to get to a senior leadership position,
Mm.
we'll also now look at your AQ, which is your adaptability quotient,
Yes.
right? How quickly can you go through the phases of change that happens and be able to adapt and look at solutioning rather than complaining, cribbing, being in denial, all of that.
Yes.
I think that is a critical thing that's going to happen now. I think that is, and in fact, most of the time today, the topics that I am requested to is also around that.
Okay.
Change management, adaptability quotient,
Okay.
ethical AI.
Mm.
How do you make your AI more ethical? So these are some of the topics that are huge for leaders right now in the market.
Okay. For them to adapt to this kind of learning and getting into a new role of leadership, usually what is the timeline that you see that they tend to take for getting adapted?
Honestly, there's no process.
Because
Right.
it's individual.
It is.
This might be a very generic question, but because it's based on the individual, right?
Right.
But usually, what do you see that?
At least 18 months, I would like to think. Because, again, the logic for this is the first 6 months you're trying to figure yourself out, right? The next 6 months you're trying to outperform, which means you've now learnt it. And this holds good for any position, by the way, any level, even for a fresher, right? The first 6 months, tunnel vision, focus on knowing the process, what's happening, the people. That should be the focus. The next 6 months is, now that I'm aware, now I will outshine. So I'd like to perform more. I'll have to prove that I'm better than the others. And the last 6 months is where I turn to helping others and create more people like me.
Okay.
Right. So 1.5 year at a minimum.
Okay.
If I were to put a timeline, I've seen people do it much lesser than that. Probably because they had to wait in one particular role and wait for a promotion for a long time. So a lot of these 1.5 year, they've already achieved it, which
Okay.
means their understanding of leadership is
Is different.
Yeah.
from now.
But mostly, I think I do the 6-6-6 rule, which is 6 months learning, 6 months outperforming, 6 months helping others and becoming the expert.
Okay. When it comes to, post leadership training, what we see is organizations or the higher management will look at quicker results.
Correct.
Right, because training is done, I've invested so much amount into it. Then how are the results? How fast they would take? Now you're saying 1.5 year for that, so they should be able to understand even this perspective.
Right. So the 1.5 years on the role as a leader, right? But in terms of training programs, Sri Lakshmi, I've seen people get immense benefits out of training programs when their bosses were involved with it. I'll probably sound sensationalistic when I say this, but 99% of the leaders don't know what topics are covered in the training in which their team members are attending. Right? They have no clue. They have no idea. So I think any leader that is invested, and that's the word that I'd like to use, invested in their team member, where they know what topics are covered so that they continue the same language after the program.
Yes.
Right? I've seen some amazing results because people genuinely want to learn.
This is absolutely right. I mean, even I've experienced throughout my previous journey also in the same thing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to key skills like your decision making, your risk management, all these things, will they be changed after your leadership coaching?
Sometimes. But most of the time, all that we are giving them is additional, more tools. I jokingly say this in my programs. I do not trust programs that say will transform you, especially leadership. There could be other life coaching, a lot of other things. But when it comes to leadership, everybody has a unique leadership style. And they are the best when they're operating in that style. Okay. But every now and then, they will realize that in certain scenario, the same person that they would otherwise get along well with is not responding the same way. That's the self-awareness that's required for a leader to say, you know what, my natural leadership style is not working out in this scenario. At such time, do I have other ways of how I could deal with this case? That's what these training programs are giving them, right? But if I'm targeting to change who they are as a leader, they're bound to fail because everybody has a unique leadership style. They should stick to it. That's when they're giving themselves the best shot of being the better leaders. But not every leadership style is appropriate for every scenario. That's when try to invest in yourself and learn, because we give you more frameworks, more toolkits that are tried and tested that work.
Okay.
Right.
So the frameworks are also different for every organization based on their culture?
Not really. Some may be, but a leader is a leader. Time management is time management. So the frameworks are pretty tried and tested.
Okay.
Now, how they would want to drive it is different from organization to organization. Like if you look at the culture at some of the organizations like a Google or a Facebook or an Uber, right? There is a lot more trust that is entrusted on the employees to manage themselves, and that's a culture that they create. But a bank can do the same because a bank is highly regulated by authorities, right? And by policies. So they have to be a lot more instructive in the way they deal with employees because they cannot take the risk. But I know of companies that have made those organizations also extremely employee friendly, like HSBC, my ex-employer. So it depends from organization to organization, but the frameworks are the same.
Frameworks are the same. But
in fact, before the interview, I was giving you an example of Virat Kohli and Sachin Tendulkar, right? A cover drive is a cover drive, right?
Yes.
Some people are more elegant when they play it, but if I have to learn it as a non-cricketer, the process is the same to learn the cover drive on the books, right? Now, how I make it look good, that's unique to me.
Yes.
But the process of the cover drive is the same for everybody who wants to learn cricket.
Yes.
Same with leadership.
Okay. So it depends on how they take it, how they implement it.
What kind of people are reporting to them?
Exactly.
How frequently can they use the cover drive? Because if I play the cover drive on the wrong ball, I get out.
Correct.
So just because I play the cover drive well cannot be used in every scenario, and that's exactly why they need leadership training.
Absolutely. This actually reminds me of one thing. If there is a leader who has joined an organization recently, and then there's a beautiful team, but they are actually in a very different culture, and then that leader comes from a different background altogether. Now, both of them are really good, but they're not compatible. Now, in such scenarios, how do you actually drive it when you're coaching them?
So one, it has to be individually done, right? And perhaps even if it is impacting a larger team, it doesn't hurt to address it together as well. So I have a conversation together, but I coach individually, right? So if both of them are reporting to me, I need to have that challenging conversation with them because it is impacting something.
Correct.
And it needs to be addressed. Without doing that, without showing them the mirror, if I'm individually doing coaching, which is what most leaders do because they want to avoid conflicts and they think that's the way they're respecting these two leaders, it's a terrible idea, right?
Okay.
There are two senior leaders who are in responsible positions at loggerheads with their own ego issues or whatever that is. It needs to be addressed together by their boss to say, hey, I see it. And if I'm seeing it, everybody's seeing it, right? And it's not good for the culture. That's not. And then I work with them individually to see, are there any personal things that I can work with? And then I again bring them back together and ensure that we are collaborating well. That's what I would do. But for sure, the step that people miss most of the time is addressing both of them together to say, you know what, sort it out. Right?
Correct. So when we were discussing a couple of minutes back, you were stressing on the point that the introverts don't bring introverts to become an extrovert because he has his own competencies, right? So when organization is trying to bring certain set of people to a leadership level, they might have beautiful amount of experience on the technical front and all, but now if the organization is trying to put them into the leadership role, their acceptance towards that role might be little less. So that's again one of the scenarios, right, that you encounter.
So I think just to emphasize on what I meant to say, just to avoid controversies with my HR colleagues, who are watching this. If an introvert wants to get into a role that requires a lot of extrovertedness, it's their choice. Support them. But as an organization, if you're telling everybody that the only way for you to grow, right, is to become an extrovert, I take offense to that, right? But look, your business, congratulations to you. At least don't have the audacity to tell us that you're a D&I compliant company. You're clearly not, right? Because you're forcing your introverts to become extroverts. That's not inclusion, right?
Correct.
However, if somebody wants to grow, right, are there behavior skills clearly defined for that role that I make a choice by applying to that role? Because I would like to, even introverts would like to grow. If not, are there opportunities that you're creating for introverts also to thrive? Are there individual contributor roles that are leadership roles? Right? Do you advertise that clearly? All leadership roles don't require people management. Right?
Good.
So in your career conversations, are you able to have these personal level of conversations with your people? If your managers aren't doing that, people boast about their IGP processes, right? Internal job postings, that we release an advert and everybody, it's a democratic company, all of that. Do you also orient your people when they join? Right? Is it a part of your induction? Is it a part of the career conversation when somebody has finished a certain amount of time in the organization? To have that conversation to say, do you like people management or do you like more individual contribution? Right?
Okay.
That doesn't happen in most companies. Good companies do it. I know at least 10 companies at my clients who do it regularly through career conversations, and so it is all in the communication. It has to become your DNA of how you drive growth in an organization. Most unfortunately, most companies treat that as a bait,
Yeah,
as a carrot,
as a checklist, as you were saying.
as a carrot,
Huh.
right?
Correct.
To make
For
people
people.
work extra hours, and that's where cultures go wrong.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's where I feel like an employee, not like your partner in your growth, because I get a promotion, which means the company is growing.
Mm.
Right? Am I feeling great about the fact that company is growing, or I feel it's my right? I know so many employees who come and say, Teja, I finished 3 years here. They didn't promote me. I said, why will they promote you?
Mm.
No, I finished 3 years. So, right? That shows that people have been dangling the carrot and
That
making them work.
promotion is a carrot.
Because now it becomes a right.
Yes.
Right? Anything that you get free,
Mm.
right, becomes a right after some time. So,
From the employee perspective also, because I was also into HR, people say, okay, management has nominated certain XYZ person, but I have not been nominated. We both were working together. Now, why are you expecting? What is the difference? What kind of value addition have you brought to the table? So even these thoughts have to be given by employees, right?
absolutely. And I think it has to be given by the boss, their immediate line manager, right? And there needs to be transparency of how these so-called nominations happen, right? When you are not transparent about it, of course there'll be doubts,
Yes.
right? And based on gender of who's getting nominated, also it gets worse, right? So a lot of there was a survey, I don't know if it was Glassdoor or Gallup, but one of them did a survey that your R&Rs, right, the rewards and recognition programs that happen, apparently more people get demotivated than motivated after those awards.
Okay, the person who gets
The award is getting motivated. The rest of them who are watching it is like, how the hell did this fellow get it? Because there's no transparency of what. I've been guilty of being in meetings when I was in my previous organization where all the senior department heads are sitting together and say, yaar, last time your department got the best employee award. This month give it to me, no yaar. You getting what I'm saying? I know this happens. And people can see through this nonsense. And that's why they'll stop believing your R&Rs.
Yes.
Right? That's when it'll end up actually demotivating more people than it actually does. So the nomination thing has to be transparent. Otherwise, these questions will definitely come up.
Yes.
And also, in a very innocent way, this employee has showcased to me, if I were the HR there, that is shouting out at me to say that this person is not clear on what's expected out of him or her. That he or she is thinking, well, I did the same as that person, why is that person getting the award? It's also an indication that nobody's talking to him regularly.
Correct. So it's more about, few people have these thoughts that it's not about same kind of work also, but we are there in the organization since the same time. So they're measuring it by time, but not the performance that they're actually giving back to the organizations.
Absolutely, because the skill required to do the next level job is different than this one. So how can they judge you purely based on your performance on current role and give you the next role?
So you would like to bring these kind of lessons to the employee, organizations, managers, everybody all together.
Most of them know it, they just don't know how to implement it. And I think that's what makes our job easier. Because most companies know it. So to be fair to them, they all want to create these kind of cultures. Sometimes I fail.
So what is the actual reality of people at the leadership level in the organizations, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion when we are talking? Do they actually include women workforce, women leadership? Do they encourage? What is it?
It is increasing for sure. I know of organizations that run women leadership programs, and they're actively promoting that. So it's changing for sure. Are we there yet? Not even close. I think it'll take us at least another half a decade to get there. And this is again purely my observation. I'm not even being scientific about it. But when I deliver a training program, you can figure out how many women leaders are in the class. It is increasing as a number. I've even had uh, a transgender person attend one of my programs. So it was a very nice sight to see that shows that even we are open to other genders in the leadership as well, not just women. So that's there. But are we doing enough? Probably not, because I still also see, shockingly, how people how much they've trivialized the entire DNI, right? Like, for example, I've seen, we are having lunch with a bunch of leaders, and this leader says, oh, so and so name, right? Let's say Archana, come sit here, diversity and inclusion.
See.
People do that. People do, trust me, people do that even now. So I think while the overuse of this term has created awareness, people are a lot more neutral in the way they talk now, compared to earlier. But the way I judge an organization's D&I capabilities or D&I policies is to look at their job adverts, right?
Looking at the opportunities that they
Job
give.
adverts that they
Okay.
list
Yes.
out in the market, right?
Yes.
If you still have years of experience listed on your job advert,
Hmm.
you're not D&I compliant. You're
Hmm.
an absolutely exclusive organization.
Hmm.
If you're putting out there that we only hire people from top tier MBA universities,
Hmm.
you're not D&I compliant.
Hmm.
You're absolutely exclusive. Because there could be a great tier 1 resource in a tier 3 city. And just because you want some elitistic, I'm not pleased, I'm an alumnus of a top business school as well.
Yes.
Please don't get me wrong. But when you put it out on
No,
a job
this is
advert,
kind of a awareness.
yeah.
Huh.
So when you say should have at least 15 years of experience, tadak, you're exclusive. You're no longer inclusive as an organization. Why? Because there could be somebody with 10 years of experience who matches all your skills but cannot apply because somebody in your organization thought this role requires 15 years of experience.
Absolutely.
It's
This is kind of
so it's not D&I. So all the drama that they do on LinkedIn and Instagram, I ignore that. All I do is I go to LinkedIn, search for any jobs that they're hiring. I pick up that job advert and I know whether they're inclusive or not. If you did not give your salary package in your job advert, you're not an inclusive organization. Because a lot of people don't know this, that in India, it is recommended, it's not really a law, but the Equal Pay and Remuneration Act of 1971 says that you cannot ask for somebody's current salary if you haven't taken a decision to hire that person. And yet, the first question every HR asks in this country is, what's your CTC?
CTC.
You know why they do that? Because when I ask HRs this, they say, oh, but if the guy is expecting a lot or if the person is already on a higher package, then it's a waste of our time. I said, then put it on your ad. Then it is upon the candidate to decide whether they want to apply for this role or not. Don't say TBD and open up for fish market discussion later. Just like how you don't want to waste your time, same with the candidate, right? If you are not paying them enough, they probably will never apply. That rule never applies both ways for some reason in this country. But if you look at companies like Deloitte, which are amazing on D&I, you will see that almost every single ad of theirs will have a salary range. So now the choice is mine, because one HR was arguing, but what if you are already at a very high package? And my question is, God forbid tomorrow, or at least in the past, I've had scenarios where I wanted to quit entrepreneurship and go back and join a job. Right?
I'm okay
now,
with that salary
you
range.
can decide and tell me I have a high package. I am bankrupt, damn it. I'm okay to work as a driver. But who the hell are you to decide that my salary package is high? It's my choice. So put your package there. Let me take a call whether I want to apply or not. Right? Little things that are so obvious that, so for me, the way I judge companies on D&I is not what they speak, but what I see in actions. And one of the most basic ones is my entry point into your organization, which is your job advert.
So thank you, Teja. Thank you for giving your time and giving a lot of insights into the
Thank you. I didn't expect this to, I know we went all over. We discussed a lot of things. Hopefully your audience saw some benefit out of it, but I completely enjoyed my conversation. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.